Good evening. Hey, Inspire, how are you? Having a good evening? Hopefully it's Friday for you or Saturday for you. Getting your weekend started. Friday night work grind? Oh man, that sucks. You gotta work on Friday nights? Do you work most nights? I broke something. My oh, paper submission? Ooh. That's no fun. What's the paper about? Anything interesting? Oh, that's interesting. I wonder why that broke. It's on quantum CNN model arch in a nice arch in a what? I don't even know what that means. What about you? We done with the bot? Not done with it. I'm just at a place where basically I'm writing tests and then I've got to rewrite. I'm just basically in a place where it's not super exciting, um, to do on stream. And there's other stuff that could maybe be more interesting for people to check out with me. So that's why tonight I think we're going to take a look at React Router. Although I wanted to try to use the Discord bot to post to my Discord server, but it seems like I've broken it somehow. So right now I'm trying to troubleshoot what's wrong with the Discord bot locally. It says no service type for stevebot.library.i implementation has been registered. Okay, interesting. So why? That doesn't make sense to me. Let's see, this piece of code shouldn't even be executing. And I don't know why it is. Let's see, that can be simplified. Yeah, I mean, I love writing tests. I just know other people don't find it particularly interesting. You know what I mean? So that's why. At the moment, though, I'm trying to figure out how I broke it. Line 20. That's not even... I mean, I guess I can actually show this. I mean, there's nothing I'm doing here that's like secret. Hold on one sec. I'm just trying to troubleshoot why it's basically I'm not registering a service properly. I did a little bit of refactoring on the Discord bot, and I was going to use it to post into the server. But I need to figure out why it's complaining. Let's see, this is the line that throws. And let's see, my program, I'm adding telemetry. And then I'm adding the Discord client down here. I'm kind of wondering if the building of the service provider Oh, yes, because we're not actually adding that unless we get into this section, and I don't have seek set up. Okay, so I really should always add this. Regardless of seek is set up or not, we should add that to the container. Actually, no, we shouldn't. We shouldn't add that to the container. The problem is in here. In here's our problem. So in here, we shouldn't make this required. What we should do is we should say, yeah, let's just do var version. Yeah, and then we'll do a known, and then, or no, let's just set, this is going to be version 0.0. Otherwise, we will just get the service. That way we don't throw. And then over here, what we'll do is we'll say version. Because those things really shouldn't be dependent on each other. Okay, we should have fixed that now. Okay, now we're gonna try this again. So we've got to get ngrok up and running for this to work locally. Hello, Arkin. By the way, I saw you join the chat, and I forgot to say hi back. Okay, ngrok, and then we'll run the bot. Okay, and then we'll update the description of my stream. We'll save. And let's see if we get a message in Discord. There we go. All right, people in the Discord know about it. Let's go. Also, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get my protein coffee real quick. I'll be right back. Just when I come back, don't let me forget that I'm muted. All right, we're back. This is the coffee of choice this evening. I worked out earlier, so seems appropriate. What do I want to do now? Okay, I gotta reset some stuff real quick, and then we'll move on to React Router, like I promised. We can turn that off. We can shut that process down. All right, so I haven't looked at React Router in quite a long time, and I know they made some big changes in they made some big changes, I think, in version 7, right? Basically, there was React Router, then those guys went out and created what was it? What was the name of the stack that the team behind React Router created? It was called like Remix, right? Yeah, Remix Run. And so then that team that was behind Remix decided, okay, we're gonna move back all of our focus to React Router, is what I understand. And so now we have React Router v7. So I think I'm just gonna start with I'm new. Yeah? Might as well just start at the beginning. Okay, so there's different modes. I guess that's the first thing we need to know right off the bat, huh? There's different modes. Also I need to reset my line counter thing, because that's wrong. MPX. Hey Yonley, how are you? Arc and reverb. Are you getting reverb? Is it bad? Does the audio sound bad? As far as I know, Remix, the brand, remained, but the implementation is currently what previously was called Reverb. Oh, interesting. I thought the guy I thought the guy behind Remix was Ryan from Remix. This guy, Ryan Flores. I thought he was the guy that was behind Remix. And then he brought his team that was behind Remix back to focus on React Router. And he was one of the original authors of React Router, and then he split off to focus on Remix, and then now he's come back to React Router. But I could be wrong. That's just what I understand. Okay. So where did the React Router docs go here? Okay, so there's 3 modes to use it in your app. So there are 3 guides to get you started. There's declarative, there's data, and there's framework. Learn which mode is right for you. If I had to guess, declarative is like spa mode. Data is like you can load data in the routes and then pass that off to client rendered components. And I'm guessing framework is what allows you to do like SSR, server side rendering and all that. Okay, so let's go into picking a mode. Okay, React Router is a multi-strategy router for React. There are 3 primary ways or modes to use it in your app. Across the docs, you'll see these icons indicating which mode the content is relative to. They're additive, so you move from declarative to data and then to framework, which I think that makes sense, right? So if declarative is like you're only doing client-side rendering, then you start loading data not in your components, but you start loading data at the route level. And then once you've made that migration, then it makes sense that you can also probably start using some server-side rendering. Inspire how I feel watching people talk about React when I know nothing about it. I haven't written much React in a long time. The last thing I built in React was probably a year ago, honestly. So it's been a little while. Arkin, I saw an interview. He said Remix was deprecated, and they went on with Reverb. He then said the mindshare around Remix was so strong they branded Reverb as Remix, and so externally it doesn't even seem like Remix had a full change of implementation. Oh, interesting. Well, either way, I'm happy they came back to React Router and they've decided to really pour their hearts into making React Router more of a alternative to Next.js. So I think that's wonderful. Okay, so declarative mode enables basic routing features like matching URLs to components, navigating around the app, providing active states with APIs like link, use navigate, and use location. So this to me is much more like how you would be used to using React Router in, I guess, version 6 or earlier. So this is probably what I've been used to using it to do, or have used it in the past to do. Okay, and then data mode is by moving route configuration outside of React rendering. Data mode adds data loading, actions, pending states, and more with APIs like loader, action, use fetcher. Now this, I haven't used Remix, but I've seen code of people that have used Remix, and these thoughts seem like they directly come from Remix. This idea of a loader and an action, which I think is cool. So that's very cool. Okay, so then the framework mode. The framework mode wraps data mode with a Vite or a Vite. I'm gonna call it Vite plugin to add the full React Router experience with type-safe hrefs, type-safe route module API, intelligent code splitting, SPA, SSR, and static rendering strategies, and more. So this is the framework mode is like we're coming for you, Next.js, right? That's the. I mean, not that like they're in direct competition with Next.js, but the framework mode is like that's what the framework mode's for. Let's see, decision advice. Every mode supports any architecture and deployment target. So the question isn't really about if you want server-side rendering, SPA, etc. It's about how much you want to do yourself. Use framework mode if you are too new to have an opinion, are considering Next.js, Solid Start, SvelteKit, Astro, Tansac, etc. and want to compare, just want to build something with React, might want to server render, might not, are coming from Remix, or are migrating from Next.js. Okay. Use data mode if you want data features, but also want to have control over bundling, data, and server abstractions. Get started with data mode. Okay. Use declarative mode if you want to use React Router as simply as possible. Are coming from v6 and are happy with the browser router component, have a data layer that either skips pending states like local first, background data replication or sync, or has its own abstractions for them. Are coming from create React app. You may want to consider framework mode though. So it really seems like they kind of are heavily pushing people towards using the framework mode, doesn't it? I mean, based on that context. I say we just take a look. I say we just jump in. Framework mode has all the features, so let's just go down the framework path. And based on the docs, it seems like a lot of the features you can sort of incrementally opt into, right? I mean, at least that's what it seems like to me. So let's start there. I honestly have no plans for like building anything or anything. I figured I would just start with kind of their docs and maybe their tutorials and then go from there. I think it might be fun to build like a links page. You know how people have like those link tree pages? Link tree. Maybe it'd be fun to recreate my own link tree page. Although using React routers probably using a framework for doing that's probably overkill, but who cares? Okay, so let's get started here. And also, if you're a very experienced person with React or you know React Router as well, please feel free to jump in the chat and help me learn. Let's see, React Router Learnings. That's what I'm going to call it. And let's call this, yeah, let's just call it what they called it. Oh no, we have deprecation already. Let's see, initialize a Git repository. No, we want to do that one level higher. Yeah. Oh dang it! No. I wanted to do yes there. That's all right. npm install. And then run dev. You also have a number of ready deploy templates available for you to get started. Oh, that's cool. What kind of templates? JavaScript only template, Node custom server template, Node Postgres SQL template, a Cloudflare template, a Vercel template. Ah, look at that. That's pretty cool. Community templates. This is do you guys know who Kent C. Dodds is? I'm a big Kent C. Dodds fan. He's just super smart. I've never used the Epic stack though, but he's super smart. Like, he obviously is an exceptionally good JavaScript developer. Okay, so let's go back. Let's see if npm install is done. All right, let's go npm run dev. I did not mean to paste that. Look at us. Hey, I know React Router now. I'm a React Router guy. Should we join their Discord? Maybe. You must complete a few steps. Maybe I should have something like that in my Discord server. Although their Discord server is probably like 100 times bigger than mine. Which, by the way, if you're new here and you're not in our Discord server, you should definitely get in there. Also, I need to update the what bro is doing. Nightbot update command. So trying to stay up to date. So trying to get. All right. So do they have any more? Do they have? Let's see if they have any more tutorial for us. Okay, next is routing. Let's see. Routes are configured in the app/routes.ts file. Each route has two required parts: a URL pattern to match the URL and a file path to the route module that defines its behavior. So this is your pattern, and then this is your module file. Interesting. Oh, and this is how you wrap a layout. Interesting. Let's see, if you prefer to find your routes via file naming conventions rather than configuration, the @react_router fs routes package provides a file system routing convention. You can even combine different routing conventions if you like. Okay. So what do you guys like to do? Do you guys like file system routing, or do you guys like configuration-based routing? I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like file-based routing makes more sense in my mind, like the way I think about things or structure of my code. I think file-based routing makes sense, but I can also see configuration-based routing being kind of powerful. Let's see, here's a sample route module. Provides type safety and inference. Provides loader data to the component. Renders after the loader is done. That's nice. Routes can be nested inside parent routes. I like the way they're using functions here. I like the way they're saying, hey, this is a route. Here's the route, here's the base module, and then here's some child routes. The path of the parent is automatically included in the child. So this config creates both dashboard and dashboard/setting URLs. Child routes are rendered through the outlet in the parent route. Nice. Okay. Every route in the routes.ts file is nested inside the special app root.tsx module. Okay, I like this. I like the layouts. This was always something that I felt like in React Router was kind of odd. Like setting up the proper, especially when you get into like having different layouts for the different states of authentication, right? When you have like, you have a layout that applies to all your public routes, and then you have a layout that applies to all your authenticated routes. That always felt a little clunky. So I kind of like this API. I definitely like the index route. That is cool. I just like that it's very declarative using functions like this to say, this is my index module, right? Also the prefix is nice too, right? So you can say projects, project ID, project / project ID / edit. Dynamic segments, okay, I like that. They've basically covered all the bases here, right? Like this is all stuff you could do in the old React Router, but I like the API. Splats, also known as catch-all and star segments. If a route path pattern ends with /star, then it will match any characters following the /, including other / characters. You just have to assign it a new name. You can destructure the splat. You just have to assign it a new name. A common name is splat. Component routes. You can also use components that match the URL to elements anywhere in the component tree. What does that mean? Oh, these routes do. This is kind of how you would define, you know, routes in a router in the old version of React Router. Note that these routes do not participate in data loading, actions, code. So if you do this, you're really missing out on a lot of functionality. Okay, let's explore the template a little bit. And just see how this is set up out of the box. So I'm guessing the public folder, that's obviously for like your static assets and whatnot, I'm assuming. And then you're obviously using Vite as the bundler. And looks like they set up Tailwind out of the box. What's tsconfig pass? What's that? Anybody know about that? Is that just so things resolve properly, I wonder? Proper module resolution. Let's see. tsconfig pass plugin Vite. Was that the module it was coming from? Yeah, Vite tsconfig pass. What is this for? I've never used this before. Give Vite the ability to resolve imports using TypeScript's path mapping. Ooh, that's nice. So that's basically so that Vite can resolve modules according to what you've set up in here. I'm going to remember that because I would probably use that in my even in my non-React Router projects, I would probably use that plugin. It's stuff like that. Whenever you're exploring new technologies or you're trying a new thing out, it's stuff like that. Those are the nuggets of things that like you get exposure to stuff that you wouldn't otherwise, right? Like, oh, interesting, a new little feet plugin here that I can put in my back pocket and use in other places. I love that. I love that about learning. All right, let's go look at our apps. So we have our app.css, and that's basically doing all the Tailwind stuff. Man, I haven't written Tailwind in a long time. It's been like a year and a half since I've done anything with Tailwind. And this is our special root.tsx file that they were talking about. So I'm guessing these links get automatically populated into the head section. Or I guess they get automatically put here, wherever you put the links component. Anything you export from a route ends up there in the head, in the links of the page, I'm assuming. Like, let's just hold on. I know the docs probably say this stuff, but I think it helps to try to like look at the template, explore the code, and then try to connect that understanding with your own logic, right? So you like read, look at the code, and start to kind of form your own understanding. So let's go here. We should disable this, and then we'll go here. We'll go to, what did I call this? I think I called it React Route. Yeah, there we go. npm run dev. If we inspect this, yeah, I think those are all the links from earlier, aren't they? I don't know why that erred, but let's say you put another one in here. I have no idea what this is. But I just want to see if that's how it works. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. So I'd imagine you can just, whenever you dynamically declare a route somewhere, you could probably export links from that route. That's cool. Next.js has a similar idea. And then I'm guessing same thing for like meta. I have no idea what scroll restoration is or scripts, but I'm guessing they're going to tell me. And then basically everything gets rendered in this outlet, because this is essentially the root of the app. And this is like a global error boundary. So if anything goes wrong, so like let's just try to throw an error. We'll just throw an error here. See what happens. Yep, so this is like our global error boundary. Okay. So is that, I wonder if that's something you probably wouldn't ship that to production, would you? Yeah, you probably wouldn't want to ship that to production. But I guess you could. Probably want something that probably doesn't put stack trace in their face. XDevnon, hey, what's up, man? How are you? Sup, bro? How are you doing? I'm doing well. I'm learning about React Router at the moment, trying to get up to speed on the latest happenings in the React Router world. So far, I'm liking what I'm seeing. Not sure what we can build with it at the moment, but I'm just kind of trying to figure out how they do things. I'll definitely have to build something with it though to really own this knowledge. Okay, and you can kind of see like they also have a 404 message here. So if we go back, hello world. Okay, that was kind of interesting. Did you guys see that flash? What's that about? Hello world. I wonder why there's why that's happening. Yeah, I don't like that. I'd want to fix that. I don't understand why it's happening, but I definitely wouldn't want that in my own app. I'm sure there's a good reason for it. Okay. So that's our route. And then we have some routes, it looks like. We have one route, which is our home route. And this is your meta content. So that was, so if we look back at that, the route layout, the route, right? This is the meta tag. So I'm guessing whatever you export from a route module as meta gets injected there, which is nice. And then here's our routes. And so since this sits at, so since that index sits at the is like the only element and the base element in that array there, that's always going to be, that's our home page. That's why that's our home page. But if we were to modify that, right, if we were to say, based on the docs, if we were to actually say route, I think, and if we were to actually say, you actually load at welcome, then I don't think my home page would load, right? Yeah, so nothing loads, but if I go to /welcome, now we load. Okay, that's intuitive. Put that back to index. I like it. I like everything so far, and then obviously this is just your standard React component. Okay, fair enough. I feel like I'm understanding. I'm picking up what they're putting down. Mechanic Boy, what code editor is that? Mechanic Boy, this is NeoVim. This is my editor of choice. And you're welcome to see my NeoVim configurations are there. I just posted the link in the chat if you're interested. Hey, what's up, Aiden? It's been a minute, man. How are you doing? Wizard Engineer, do it in C++. Bro, do it in Rust. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if building front ends in Rust would be fun. Maybe, I guess, if you're good at Rust. Building front ends in C++, I don't know. I'm sure there's some way to do it, right? Min, why do you prefer NeoVim over something like VS Code? Okay, I'll come back to that in just a second. Saroj, is this AI generated? I am not AI generated. I am a real human being, flesh and blood. So it's not that. So going back to your question, Momin, about preferring NeoVim over something like VS Code, it's not that I prefer it. VS Code's great. That's what I used for the first 5.5 years of my coding career, right up until like January of this year. So really, it really using NeoVim was more about just a side quest. Like, it seemed like fun. It seemed like it would be an adventure. And so at the beginning of this year, I sat down and was like, you know what? I'm going to try to set up NeoVim as an alternative to VS Code. And so far, it's been fun. So far, I've been able to do that. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Aiden, been good, man. Finally got a programming job with Python. Dude, that's awesome. Congratulations, Aiden. That's wonderful, man. Are you enjoying it? You having a good time? Sebastian 11 Shin. Hello, Sebastian. Good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, it's not really about preferring NeoVim over VS Code. It's just I took a little side quest, and so far I've enjoyed it. The biggest thing I've taken away from using NeoVim has been learning how to use Vim motions to navigate my code, kind of having more of a keyboard-centric workflow. I'm not by any means like the Primeagen level on my Vimfoo, but I'll probably always use Vim motions. Like, I set up VS Code to use Vim motions now, and so whatever editor I use, I'll probably always stick with Vim motions. Aiden, well, I start in 2 weeks. I literally just had an interview earlier today. Well, that's congratulations, man. Getting a job, whether it be programming or coding related, just any job in general, getting a job takes effort and patience, and you got to be willing to get rejected many times. And so kudos to you, man, for fighting through that process and finally finding something. So congratulations, man. Okay, the files referenced in routes.ts are called route modules. Route modules are the foundation of React Router's framework features. They define automatic code splitting, data loading, actions, revalidation, error boundaries, and more. The default export in a route module defines the component that will render when the route matches. So this is kind of like Next.js's idea of pages, right? They refer to theirs as route modules. All right, there are props passed to the component. When the component is rendered, it is provided the props defined in route.componentProps that React Router will automatically generate for you. These props include loader data, action data, params, matches. Okay. You can use these props in place of hooks like use loader data or use params. This may be preferable because they will be automatically typed correctly for the route. Very cool. Route loaders provide data to route components before they are rendered. They are only called on the server when server rendering or during build with pre-rendering. So you can't use loader. You can't use a loader on the client. Okay. Client loader, called only in the browser. Route client loaders provide data to route components in addition to or in place of route loaders. Hold on. Call the server loader and or fetch get data on the client. Return the data to expose through use loader data. Okay, that's confusing. So you define a loader, and then you can define a client loader, and the client loader has the server loader as a parameter. That's a little heady. Moment. Well, Steven, summer's just started, and I'm without an internship, about to start senior year in fall. Getting a job next year without an internship will be tough. Any suggestions for utilizing summers? If you don't have an internship yet, that, to me, I would say, maybe keep looking for opportunities, right? I mean, summer's long, three months. Here in the States, it's like 3 months, right? So I wouldn't give up looking for opportunities. I'd keep applying and keep looking for, even if you land somewhere only for a short period of time, as long as they are cool with that, like, say you land something in the middle of the summer, that's still a month and a half. Maybe you can come in and do a project for them, or at the very least learn a little bit about their processes and whatnot. So I wouldn't give up yet on the internship. If you can't get an internship, I guess I would probably use the summer to build a lot of stuff. I don't know what kind of job you're looking to get in the fall, if you're doing like web dev or you're doing data science or ML, AI stuff, but I'd probably spend my summer 40 hours a week as if I had an internship, right? Maybe you can think about creating your own internship, right? Like, what would the ideal internship at a company look like for you? And then do that this summer. Might be interesting. Mechanic Boy, what programming languages have you tried? What your favorite one? I want to know your opinion. So if you look at my GitHub, profile, we can kind of see where my distribution of languages lands. So looks like my most used languages are TypeScript, C#, and JavaScript primarily. Obviously, I do a lot of web development. Most stuff that I do, most front ends I write are built in TypeScript. Most back ends I write are built in C#, although I do build some back ends in TypeScript, JavaScript. But typically, if I'm going to do something on the server, I kind of reach for C# and .NET. I've said this before. I made a short out of it before. But if you had to ask me, like, what's my favorite programming language today, I would probably say it's C#, based on all the experience I've had. I've dabbled a little bit in Rust. Like, I've gone through like 6 or 7 chapters of the Rust programming language book. I've dabbled a little bit in Go. Go seems fine. That's actually something we talked about last stream, is I'd like to get proficient enough in Go or Rust to do Advent of Code this year in one of those 2 languages. But if you told me today what's my favorite programming language, I would say C#. And if you haven't tried C# and you like writing TypeScript, you should go try C#. Like, modern .NET, modern C# is wonderful. But if you told me you can only write one programming language again in my entire life, I would pick TypeScript. And the reason for that is I think TypeScript is the perfect blend between dynamic and static typing. It works in the browser. I should say it can be compiled to work in the browser, and then it also works on the server, right? So if I was handicapped and you said you have to pick one language and you could only ever write one language again, it would be TypeScript. But my favorite language would be C# at the moment. And I do reserve the right to change my mind. So if you come back here in 5 years and you ask me the same thing, I may tell you something different. I'm curious, Mechanic Boy, what your language is, what your favorite programming languages are. Or anyone, really. If you're in chat and you want to just opine on your favorite programming languages, I'd love to hear. Mom, that's a great idea. Applaud your attention span. Learning React Router and engaging with the chat at once would distract the heck out of me. Yeah. Well, I mean, one would argue that if I really wanted to learn something deeply, I probably shouldn't stream at the same time I learn it. But, I feel like streaming and interacting with you guys is fun. And so I kind of like to blend things that I enjoy, right? So let's see. Client loaders can participate in initial page load hydration of server rendered pages by setting the hydrate property on the function. Interesting. So this is the reason why. This right here is the reason why I kind of gave up. I didn't give up, but I stopped using Next.js a lot. I use Next.js to build like 3 projects, and I stopped after the third. And the reason I stopped after the third was stuff like this. Because when you start having JavaScript that runs on the server and runs on the client, and the line that divides those things start to blur, like, it adds a lot of mental load to the development process to think, okay, where's this JavaScript running? And this seems like one of those. I think they've tried to do a good job of clearly defining that, like, the loader runs on the server, right? The client loader runs on the client. So I appreciate that they've tried to do a good job with the naming. But yeah, this whole idea, like, you know, of trying, what is it that Dan Abramov says? Is it Dan Abramov that says this, or is it Kinsey Dodds? JavaScript dissolving. I can't remember who said this, like dissolving the network, or I forget. Somebody had a good way of describing this, where basically a lot of these frameworks now are trying to make the network disappear, right? You're kind of forgetting, you're trying to eliminate the need to be concerned with the fact that you're having to fetch data across the wire. Which I think maybe is a good thing. Probably could argue it's not, but Arkin, my favorites are currently C and then Java. I need to try Java, Arkin. Like, as a C# developer, you know, people always say, like, Java and C# are really similar, and I love coffee, so I feel like I should definitely, at least once in my life, make a hard run at Java. There's just only so many hours in a week, right? And only so much time in a year. All right, so client loader, that's what we use to fetch data in our route module. Then we have an action. So route actions allow server-side data mutations with automatic revalidation of all loader data on the page when called from form, use fetcher, and use submit. Okay, so this data will be loaded after the action completes. So this is our loader. This only runs on the server, right? So it's okay to put a DB call in here. This only runs on the server. Let's see. This is a function. This is our default export from our module. So this is what's going to be rendered when we visit this route. And then we have a form in here. And the form is going to post. And then the action we're specifying at the same route. So we're on the route list, right? So like we made a GET request with our browser, we executed the loader on the server, we render the component, we send that to the client. We have a form, and so we specify action here as list. So essentially this form's going to post, and it's going to post to that list endpoint, theoretically. And then because of that, we're going to execute this action. So this will get the data from the form. So the input of title. And then, so this is running on the server because we're making another DB call here. And then we return OK true. And because this is an action, we automatically refetch the data before we render this page again. Or this component, I guess I should say again. So this all looks very familiar to like what Remix, how you would write stuff in Remix. Momin, could you quickly go over exactly what Next.js achieved that vanilla React wasn't able to. Always has me confused. So I think the biggest thing with Next.js, I mean, there's a lot to Next.js. There's a lot of features in Next.js, right? But I think like the defining thing of Next.js is this whole idea of bringing back this idea of server-side rendering. I think that was really the hot new thing, in my opinion, right? So traditional React is everything. If we were to draw this out, see if I find some blank space here on my Scala draw. But the basic idea being, if this is the browser, and you wrote a React app, that React app wholly lives in the browser, right? This is your SPA. The SPA takes care of everything on the client. Routing, rendering of the HTML, updating that's all happening in the browser. The only thing that's coming from the server is data, right? Or static files. Like your SPA is going to make a network request, an AJAX call, or whatever you want to call it, a fetch call to get data from the server, and then it's going to paint that on the screen on the client. And this is like where all the JavaScript people were, right? This is where the world's been for like the last 10 years. And then the 10 years preceding that, right? So I think Arkin just jumped in with a comment here that, yeah, that's where I was going, is that the past 10 years, though, people had been, before SPAs were a thing, people had been just taking, you have your server and then you have your browser. And what people had been doing is they had just been sending markup. They just send HTML. They'd render the HTML on the server. They send the HTML to the client, which is the browser, and the browser renders the HTML, right? So this is what the web was built around, right? All the APIs in the browser was really built around this paradigm. However, there's some clunkiness to this paradigm, right? Like when you post a form, the page has to reload completely, right? Stuff like that, that kind of clunky UX. And so then SPAs kind of came along as a reaction to like, how do we make more native feeling apps in the browser? And then what Next.js brought to the world was, well, let's give you the optionality, right? Because there's kind of a pain point that comes when you're always doing client-side rendering. You have this pain point of you're always having to load data from the server. You always have to deal with all these loading states. There's some pain points, right, to that UX design, right? All the loading spinners, the silhouette data that you see, right? When you people like will load in these silhouettes while the data is being fetched to the server. And so what Next.js said was, well, we'll let you write React, like we'll let you write React code, but then we'll let you do this, right? That's like you can use, the whole use server directive. So we'll take the React code that you've written, we'll render it on the server, and we'll send HTML to the client again, right? It's not necessarily groundbreaking, because to Arkin's point, people had been doing server-side rendered apps for forever. But it was the ability to do it with React code and kind of start to blend the world of like, you can do server-side rendering and client-side rendering, and now you get the best of both worlds, and you can mix and match, and you can decide when you need what, when you want what, right? Blazor, in the C# world, Blazor now has the same idea where you can do client-side rendering, server-side rendering, static site generation, basically all the same things, right? So all the frameworks have now kind of converged around, use the rendering that you need for whatever you're trying to accomplish, which I think is cool. And React Router is another example of that, where React Router now has this framework mode that lets you decide, like, maybe you only need server-side rendering for your particular use case, right? Mechanic Boy, I have tried so many languages, 9 to be exact, for past 8 years, and I have most experience with Lua. Mostly work on embedding. Most favorite one for me is Lua JIT because it can FFI with C. I'm not sure what FFI means. But yeah, I don't know much Lua. I know enough Lua to get my NeoVim configuration sorted out, but I've heard good things about it. Arkin, Next.js, hot new thing is what PHP had for decades, yeah. Well, I think, but like you have to remember, like if you came up in web development in the last 10 years, you probably only knew client-side rendering, right? Now, if you started in web development 20 years ago, then you were there for the server-side stuff, right? Yeah. So for some people, it probably was hot new things like, oh, you can render HTML on the server and send it to the client? Oh, wow, that's awesome. I don't have to do a loading spinner. Every time I want to fetch data, I can just fetch the data on the server and then render it into HTML and send that over to the client. That's wonderful. Badesh, hello brother. I'm working as a Peen stack developer and seeing a lot of opportunity of Python and Java only. I'm talking about India market. Any suggestions? So I don't know what the Peen stack is. I'm guessing that's, what would that be? Python something. Yeah, I'm not sure what the Peen stack is. And I'm not super familiar with the Postgres Express framework. Oh, Postgres, Express, Node.js, and Angular. Oh, interesting. I've actually never heard of that stack. I mean, I've heard of all those technologies. I just had never heard them put together like that. Postgres, I think, is wonderful. Express, I think, is okay. I think in today's world, I lean more towards Hano. But I know a lot of applications out there are using Express, so you sort of need to know Express. Node, obviously, is wonderful. And then AngularJS. I've never written any AngularJS ever, so I know very little about it. As far as if you're seeing opportunities in Python and Java, I think you have to react to that, right? Like if you're not seeing a lot of opportunities in the stack you currently know and work in, but you want a job, you're kind of forced to learn the technologies that make you employable, in my opinion. So maybe continue to look for Peen stack work, but also on the side be trying to upskill on Python and Java so you can start applying to those opportunities. You know? Like, sometimes reality is reality, right? There's nothing you can really do about it. Arkin, the problem with Next is it couples the front end and the back end. I'm not sold on the idea that it makes development easier or more seamless. A front end hitting an endpoint isn't that hard. Yeah, and I think, Arkin, that was my point about, like, when you start to blur that line between front and back, things kind of feel like they get a little bit more, it's a little bit messier. In my opinion, I think you shouldn't probably rely on these frameworks to be your backends. In my opinion, I almost think of them more as like they more almost, to me, it's a way to embrace the whole backend for front end pattern, right? Like that's how I think about it. Almost, it's like you could have a Next.js project, and your Next.js project has API routes. Those API routes call out to other services that are your kind of your official backend, right? But having a backend for your front end lets you do a lot of things, right? Gives you lots of options, lots of flexibility. So I can see the value in it, but I kind of agree with you. I probably wouldn't want my whole backend to be contained in my Next.js or my React Router project. Right, I think the things that my React Router project or my Next.js project, whatever those things it did on the back end, they would be specific for the front end, and I would still probably have my back end developed separately. Personally, I did that with the project actually. So, So I have this project that I built called Onyx GIS, and this is a Next.js project, but the client is Next.js. However, I do have API routes in this Next.js project. So some of it's client side rendered, some of it's server side rendered, and I do have API routes. But at the same time, I have a separate API server that's written in .NET that's deployed separately from that client project. So that client project still fetches data on the server, but on the server, it's talking to another API. So that's kind of that idea of like a backend for your front end, which I think is kind of a nice pattern, right? Because there's going to be things that when you're building the front end, there's going to be things you're going to want to do to the data, right? That might not always, like you may want to massage the model that you get from your backend a little bit for your particular use in your front end. So I think it's kind of nice to have the optionality there. Arkin, I agree with what you say, but Next is feature creeping. If you want a component from the front end that sits on the back end and doesn't take over your primary back end, there's Nuxt. Hopefully Remix. I haven't tried Nuxt. I need to try Nuxt because I really like writing Vue spas, so I should really try Nuxt too. Badesh, difference between PHP and Next.js is on post request PHP reload your whole page to get the HTML, but Next also sends HTML, but in JSON format, it's like sending virtual DOM of React from the server. Yes, exactly, Badesh. So you're kind of hitting the nail on the head there, where your classic style of a server-side rendered app was kind of a painful UX experience, right? But when you use something like Next.js with server-rendered components, right, you still can do all the nice UX-y things, right, of a spa, but then you also get the benefits of rendering the markup on the server. So yeah, that's where like I think it's hard if you've never built like a classically rendered server-side app. It's hard to understand. So it's probably useful for everyone to go build a server-side rendered app, build a spa app, and then build something in the middle, right? Build something with Next.js or React Router, and you can sort of compare and contrast the experiences. Mom, and learning so much. Awesome discussion, guys. Yeah, I'm definitely not an expert, right? I just know based on my own experience building stuff and using the technologies. So I'm sure there's things that I've misstated or I've used terminology wrong. But at a high level, right? At a high level, that's kind of your question to your original question of like, what does Next.js offer that vanilla React doesn't? All right, so just like with the loader, we have loader and we have client loader. So just like that with actions, now we have actions and we have client actions. So the action runs on the server, and then I'm assuming client actions are only called in the browser. Can still call the server action if needed. Interesting. So I'm wondering, so how does that work? If I'm assuming, like in this case, it wouldn't work, right? Like you have a fake DB. Like let's say this is your actual DB, right? And you're calling this here in your server action. If you were to try to call this in your client action, I'm guessing that wouldn't work. I mean, we'd have to wire it up and try it to be certain, but I'm guessing that wouldn't work. I'm guessing this example is in the case where your server action doesn't have like server dependent stuff, maybe, or like backend dependent things. But you have the option to call it, I'm assuming. Let's see, when other route when other route module APIs throw, the route module error boundary will render instead of the route component. So is the error boundary defined separately, or is it defined in the same component? I'm guessing this must be a separate component. Let's see, hydrate fallback. On initial page load, the route component renders only after the client loader is finished. If exported, a hydrate fallback can render immediately in place of the route component. Oh, that's really nice. So this is a way to provide some sort of loading UI. I like this I like this approach, right, where you have a route module and then you export different things from the module, right? And you know that when you're exporting a client loader, this is how that function is used from that module. I like that. I think that lowers the mental load for development. I like that. And then you can export headers. Let's see. Route handle allows apps to add anything to a route match in use matches. This creates abstractions. So I'm not sure I totally understand the use case there. Route links define link elements to be rendered in the document head. Okay, we already looked at that. We kind of explored that. All routes links will be aggregated and rendered through the links component, usually rendered in your app routes. We already saw that earlier. The meta tag, we saw that earlier too, so it's the same idea. Route meta defines meta tags to be rendered in the meta component. Since React 19, using the built-in meta element is recommended over the use of the route module's meta export. Okay, so instead of doing this, they recommend doing this. Fair enough. In framework mode, route loaders are automatically revalidated after all navigations and form submissions. This enables middleware and loaders to share a request context and optimize in different ways than they would be in data mode. If you define this function, it allows you to opt out of revalidation for a route loader for navigations and form submissions. Interesting. So I guess for some reason, if you didn't want the data to be revalidated and fetched again when you're navigating or when you're submitting a form, you would return false here. It's hard because I know all of these APIs, all of the API surface here exists for a reason. But as you're reading it, sometimes it's hard to come up with a good example, right, of like why you would use it. Which is the reason you definitely always want to like build something. All right, rendering strategies. There are 3 rendering strategies in React Router. There's client-side rendering, server-side rendering, which we just had a long discussion about, and then static pre-rendering. Routes are always client-side rendered as the user navigates around the app. If you're looking to build a single-page app, disable server rendering. So where's this defined? Oh, this is defined in the React Router config. We haven't looked at that file. Okay, so that means if you set this to false, every route is going to render on the client like your traditional, like your vanilla React project. If you set this to true, then every route's going to render on the server, and they're going to send markup to the client, essentially. Server-side rendering requires a deployment that supports it. Though it's a global setting, individual routes can still be statically pre-rendered. Routes can also use client data loading with client loader to avoid server rendering / fetching for their portion of the UI. Okay, so what they're saying there is basically, if you have SSR set to true, but you want a route to not do things to basically you want the route to load data on the client and render on the client, then you can use the client loader, right, for that route. Because the component will only render after the client loader finishes. So if you export a client loader, that component's not going to render until you're on the client executing the client loader. So that's kind of a nice way to opt in or out without having to use use server or use client like Next.js uses. That's kind of nice. And then, of course, you've got static pre-rendering. So return a list of URLs to pre-render app build time. So this is nice, right? Because there's probably, most sites have pages like this that they're just static content, right? So I'm thinking of things like about, contact, terms and conditions. What are some other things that would be privacy policy, landing page, right? If your site has like a home page that's about like marketing your app or whatever, that's not super interactive. This is useful for SEO and performance, especially for deployments without server rendering. When pre-rendering, route module loaders. Hold on, what does it say here? When pre-rendering, route module loaders are used to fetch data at build time. So you can still define loaders, but those loaders are only ever going to really execute once when you build your application. What? Why would you do that? Where would you use that? Would you? Oh, I guess you could use that to like yeah. Why would you use that? Yeah, I can't think of a good reason I would want to only load data at build time. I guess like static files. Maybe you're reading stuff from the file system or something. Andalons, how to hide code from inspect? Are you saying you don't want people to be able to right click and inspect and see this? Is that what you're trying to say? You're trying to avoid this? Because that's not really a thing. I mean, there's techniques like people will do like obfuscation of their JavaScript code, right? So I mean, you could theoretically do some stuff, but smart people are going to still be able to probably figure shit out. Like you should, yeah, you should assume anything you send to the browser somebody can get a hold of. There's not really a way to do that. What are you trying to hide? I guess what is are you trying to prevent people from like taking your code? Is that what you're worried about? Or are you trying to put secrets? Andalon's built a shitload of shotload of products in one model. So yeah, I'm not sure. I business logic. Yeah, I mean, if you send it to the client, it's going to be there, right? They're going to be able to see. They can go to sources and see every bit of any bit of a static file that you loaded in, any JavaScript you loaded in. There are tools to obfuscate your JavaScript, like to make it really hard to read what the heck your JavaScript is doing, right? You can minify JavaScript, but then you can also obfuscate JavaScript in your build process. But again, any person who knows what they're doing, if they're crawling around in the inspect panel, like if somebody knows how to right click and inspect and crawl around in here, they can probably take your obfuscated code and put it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to explain it. So yeah, if there's anything you want to hide, you put it on the server. Yeah, if there's anything you don't want people to see or know about, and then just remember too, like, they can see things going across the network, right? So if there's certain things, just assume anything you send to the browser, somebody's gonna get a hold of at some point. That's kind of the safest assumption to make. I wish I had a better answer for you, but at the moment, no, there's not really a great way to do what you're looking to do. Andalon, any links you can send me to? What are you building in, or what language or what technologies are you using? What if you tell me what languages or what technologies, I probably can link you to some places to start with. At the very basic, you'll want some sort of server, right? Meaning you'll need to run some sort of persistent code on the server, PHP, JavaScript, MySQL. So I'm not very familiar with PHP, but that PHP code would essentially be, any business logic that you don't want to go to the client needs to live in your PHP code. Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah. And I don't know much about PHP. I don't have any really good resources to link you to on the PHP side of the house. What? PHP is the shit, yeah. I'm sure it's great, yeah. I've heard modern PHP is wonderful. I've never used it before. Oh shoot, I just closed out of that. I didn't want to close out of that document. Where was I? I was in framework, routing, route module. I was in rendering strategies. That's what I was looking at. Now we're going to look at data loading. Let's see. Yeah, I wish I had good resources to give you, Andalons. I don't at the moment. I just don't know much about PHP or that community. I know the Laravel community is a great place to be, Buckboy, how's the NeoVim C# setup been treating you? Oh, it's great, man. I've been writing, basically everything I've written for the last 4 or 5 months has been using NeoVim. We actually just built a Discord bot, all in C#, and that's been a ton of fun. I think the trickiest thing on the C# side was the debugger, but once I had the debugger in place, I'm good to go. Like I can debug my tests, I can run my tests in NeoVim, I can debug my code in NeoVim. Yeah, it's been good. I mean, obviously, like the other day, I was doing a bunch of refactoring. Like I was moving projects around and project references, and I was doing that with NeoVim and the CLI, and that was a little, like, that right there was a perfect example of where like Visual Studio shines, right? Because it was just very onerous to use the CLI and use the text editor, fixed namespaces, account for project references being moved, different folders and directories, where if I had done that in Visual Studio, or really even if I've done it in VS Code, yeah, that would have been a lot faster and a lot easier. So yeah, there's still a lot of value in products like VS Code, Visual Studio, Rider, but NeoVim's fun to work in, so I'm gonna keep using it. Right now I kind of go between NeoVim, VS Code, and Rider. Those are the three that I kind of find myself using the most often. Bucky Boy, nice. Been thinking about taking the leap. No solution. Definitely is a challenge. Yeah, it's just, I mean, you can still have solution files, and you can still have project references. You can do everything you would normally do with the CLI. It's just not, Visual Studio, you can drag a project and on top of another project, and you can move folders, and namespaces automatically update themselves, and let's see what Andalon. Sorry, I missed some of your comments there. Sorry for taking up your time. Did some stuff in Python. Awesome. AI models as well. Odessa's the name. Well, nice to meet you, Odessa. Thanks for hanging out. This is a cool channel. We'll tell my peeps. Oh, appreciate that, man. Yeah, and also if you want to join our Discord, we have a Discord channel or a Discord server, so you're welcome to join our server if you're interested. No Solution Explorer. Agreed, man. Yeah, it does take some getting used to. But it's been fun. I mean, nonetheless, it's been a good time. Learning how to navigate with Vimotions has been the biggest takeaway. Let's see. Client loader is used to fetch data on the client. This is useful for pages or full projects that you'd prefer to fetch data from the browser only. Okay, so this is kind of like what they were saying, where if, let's say in your configuration, you've set SSR to true, right? But you can still have a route that's purely client loaded, because you're just going to define a client loader. You're going to define a piece of UI that's going to be displayed while this loader is executing. And then once that client loader finishes, then you'll render this guy, right? And I think that's nice. That's really nice. This would be opposed to, in Next.js, you'd have to add use client at the top of this file. And then to do the server rendering, you just instead of defining a client loader, you define a loader. And the reason you don't need a hydration fallback, right? You don't need a hydrate fallback here is because this is all happening on the server. So what gets sent to the client is markup with your data in it. This is also good to know. The loader function is removed from client bundles, so you can use server-only APIs without worrying about them being included in the browser. So that's nice. Oh, so this is a good example of the pre-rendering loader, right? When I was saying I don't know why you would use a loader if you're just going to pre-render the page. But like I said, if you're gonna get some data from like a file system, this would be a good example of that. See, loader and client loader can be used together. The loader will be used on the server for initial pre-rendering, and then client loader will be used on subsequent client-side navigations. So how does that work? If you call server loader here, but your server loader has server specific APIs in it, what happens? Yeah, I'm curious to explore this in code a little bit. Odessa, oh cool, thanks. Yes, one more question. I feel like I cannot stop coding. Is coding addiction a thing? Going to check out, putting files on the server. Catch you tomorrow, man. Take care. Blessings. See ya, Odessa. As far as is coding addicting, I think it can be. I think the reason why I like, I think the reason why programming and coding caught on for me personally was the feedback loop, right? Particularly, I think that's why web development caught on. Because you type some text on a screen and then immediately you see the effects of that, and you have this really tight feedback loop, and I think that feedback loop can definitely be addicting, but not addicting in like the negative sense of the word, just it's very reinforcing, I guess I should say, right? It's very reinforcing. Waves Coder, what are you making today? I'm really not making anything. Today I just decided I'm going to learn about React Router. So I've really just been reading their docs, looking at some of their template code from their starter template, and just trying to kind of conceptually wrap my head around how React Router v7 works now. Because I've used React Router in the past, but they've made a bunch of changes to it in the last version. And so I figured, well, I better stay up to speed with what's happening in React land. See you later, Odessa. Have a nice night, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. Appreciate all your messages. Where was I? Oh my gosh, I've lost my place. Okay, next we're gonna talk about. Hey, honey. That's my wife in the background. She's actually being a responsible adult and doing chores. Let's see. Okay, so now we're talking about actions. All right, data mutations are done through route actions. When actions complete, all loader data on the page is revalidated to keep your UI in sync. I actually think it might be helpful. I know this is going to sound really dumb, but I think the thing we should build first with React Router v7 is a to-do app. I know. It's dumb and it's simplistic, but I think it would really help illustrate all this functionality. Like we could build the to-do app only using server-side rendering, right? Start there, and then explore places where we might want to do client-side stuff. So, if anybody has an idea for a more interesting first project with the React Router, obviously I'm all ears, but... Okay, client actions only run in the browser and take priority over a server action when both are defined. So that's good to know. So you can define client and server, but if you define both, the client action takes priority. Which what this basically means is when you post this form, this request, right? This some API update project, you're actually going to see that request happen in the network tab. Is what that means, right? So you'd actually see whatever fetch call this makes under the hood, you'd see that in your network tab. So server actions only run on the server and they're removed from the client bundle, which means if you were to use this one, you would probably see a network call because you're still posting, right? But you wouldn't see you wouldn't see this, right? Because you're using the actual, in this code, you're using the actual DB. So you wouldn't see this in your network. This is all happening on the server. Actions are called declaratively through form and imperatively through use submit, or by fetcher.form, fetcher.submit. What does that mean? By referencing the route's path in a post method. Okay, so actions are called declaratively through form. So if I have an action defined here and I define a form, it's automatically going to call the action. Or you can do this, or you can specifically specify the route. This will cause calling actions with a form. This will cause a navigation and a new entry will be added to the browser history. You can submit form data to an action imperatively with use submit. Okay. And again, this will cause a navigation. Which is probably something to remember if you're used to building spas and submitting forms and doing e.prevent default, right? Then you need to remember that the submit action is going to cause a navigation. Fetchers allow you to submit data to actions without cause. So this is what you would do. This is kind of more classic of what people do in spas today, where people say, you know, prevent the default submit behavior of a form. So in order to do that in React Router, you'd use fetcher instead. And that's how you prevent the navigation. Okay, and then you need a nav link component, right? That's gotta have something like that. Nav link renders default class names. Okay, fair enough. So you can style them differently. It also has callback props with the states for inline styling or conditional rendering. Use link when the link doesn't need active styling. Okay, interesting. So this would be, you know, nav links. This would be like you have your top side nav or your left side nav, and that's visible to your user all over your site, and you want them to be able to see the context, right, of what page or what route, or maybe the nested route that they're on. And then this would be more of if you just need to log in or log out, or if you need to I guess if maybe you wanted to send the user back to the index view, right? Like you want to wrap the little icon in the top left of your website. The form component can be used to navigate with URL search params provided by the user. If the user enters journey into the input and submits it, they will navigate to forms with form method equals post will also navigate to the action prop, but will submit the data as form data instead of search params. It is more common to use fetcher to post form data. And then you can also redirect. Inside of route loaders and actions, you can return a redirect. Okay, so this is how you would guard against you don't have an authenticated user, or if you want to create, or if you want to redirect to a new project after you create it, fair enough. And then you can also navigate without user interaction, so they provide a hook to do that. You also have pending navigation. Oh, this is kind of cool. This reminds me of, like, you know how on GitHub, like GitHub, when you load a page, they have that little loader icon on the top. So they kind of provide you with a hook to do something similar, where you can say use navigation, and then you can create a Boolean right? And you can say, well, if it is navigating, we're going to define some sort of loading, some sort of navigation indication. That's cool. But then you can also localize them too. So you could have a global value, but then you could also have one that's local. That's really nice. Buck boy, a man's got to code. You're right, man. Coding is just, it's fun. It's fun. That's like I keep telling people, like, if somebody took away my ability to code and said I had to be a vibe coder, I'd be sad. Waves coder. Bro, I have to ask something. Let's say I'm writing a backend, and one endpoint in that is about back testing some data. So which is best way to run that? Back test it. It is high CPU and memory usage. So do I multiple container per client, or is there a better way? Okay, so are you saying, Wave Coder, if you're still here, let me know if you're still here, but I think what you're asking about is you're saying, so you have your client, then you have an API endpoint on the server. So client, server, and you're saying, okay, my client hits this endpoint, and let's say the endpoint is API / do lots of stuff. Is that kind of your situation? And so this call is gonna cause a lot of processing on the server. Is that the setup you got going on? And so you're concerned with like this chewing up the server's memory and CPU? This would probably be a case where, yes, this would probably be a case where you're going to want to, you're probably going to want to have a queue first of all, right? Like you probably don't want to block the request, the response, until you do all that work, right? So I guess think of something like image processing maybe, or uploading a large file or something. Like you're probably going to want to receive the request, queue up put something in a queue, and then respond to the client right away, right? So it's very quick request response. And then that queue is going to have some sort of worker process, right? And that worker process could live, here, right? Let's say it's all self-contained, right? And you have some sort of background process that's pulling that queue for jobs, right? Or you might have like a dedicated server, like a dedicated queue server where that process lives and runs, and that process only consumes the memory and the CPU of that machine. That could be another way. But then obviously then you have to your queue has to be sort of like a distributed thing. It can't be something that lives in the server, right? So that's where you start. Now you're going to have to say, okay, now you've got like a RabbitMQ, like a RabbitMQ server. And so the server is going to in-queue something to the RabbitMQ server, and then your queue server over here, let's call this the queue server, is going to pull jobs, right? And then obviously you're going to have some way of communicating back that item was processed. So, but yeah, that would be the first. I think the first thing I would do is I would just take it out of that inline request response, right? If a user makes a request and you just block until you've done all that work, that's probably not good. You're probably going to want to like receive the request, put something on a queue, let the user know that you've acknowledged it, process that job in the background, and then notify the user when the job's done. Yep, exactly. That's probably Waves Coder. That's probably what I would approach doing. Now, obviously, that adds complexity, right? It adds complexity to your deployment process. You've got to figure out some way of having the ability to communicate between. You probably are then going to have, right? Then you're back in this world of like, well, how do I communicate? How does the server communicate to the client that it did the work or it's done the work? Then you're going to have to start getting into, does the client sit there and pull, like for example, when you respond to the API call, you could respond with like a job ID, and then the client could like pull the job ID, right, every so often. Or better yet, probably instead of pulling, you could use like WebSockets or servers and events. You could return the job ID, have the client open up a WebSocket, right, and they're listening on that particular room, that particular WebSocket room. They're listening to whenever that job ID receives like a done event or something, right, and then you fetch the data, right, from the server at that point. But yeah, you're gonna have to work out the communication there. But I think this is the classic way of handling that type of scenario. I did something similar to that with this project I built called Onyx. It's called Onyx Graph. See if I can log in here, if I can remember what my login is. I don't remember. Did I get logged in? But I took that similar approach to a problem in this project, as I described earlier. Why is it not? Is my API down? Oh, hold on. I know why. I know why this isn't working. One sec. Okay. Shoot, I've got to add something else. This project's hosted on a VPS within the same network that this machine's on, so I have some host resolution issues that I have to get over by modifying my host file. There we go. So the way this project works is basically I build these graphs based on data that I pull back from an external third-party API. So you can see, like, I build up a list of the fields and the connections between these different structures. And the way this works is basically I make a request to build a graph. When that request gets made, I queue up a job, and then that job gets run in a background process. And there is a WebSocket connection on the front end that listens for a done event, and whenever it receives that done event, it then requests the completed graph data and then paints that on the screen. So that's kind of the approach I took here, because it was a similar idea. It was like a server intensive resource thing, because a user might have 3 apps, but they could also be building a graph that has not just 3 nodes, it has 150 nodes, and it has 300 connections or something. So I did that in a separate background process. Waves cutter. Well, got your point. Okay, nice. Okay, yeah. I may have tried to drive that home a little bit too much, but that would be my approach. Mom and Steven, is there a regular time to use streaming throughout the week, or is it more of a random whenever you have time thing? I try to be consistent with it. So lately it's been in the evenings after 8 p.m. Central Standard Time once I put my kids to bed. I'm a 32. If you're new here, I'm a 32-year-old dad of 2. So after my kids go to bed, that's usually when I stream these days. They're on summer break too. Earlier this year when they were in school, I would stream over my lunch hour. But now that they're out of school, I'm streaming in the evenings. Just a little bit easier. The best way, though, to get notified, of when I do go live is to join the Discord, because I always try to post in the Discord when I start a stream. So if you join the Discord, you will definitely know when I go live. Shiv. Hello, Shiv. How are you? It's good to see you again. Life treating you well? I haven't written much code this evening, but I've learned a lot about React Router. This is really nice that they cover this explicitly in their docs, because how many times do you see this? When like you know how like how in a lot of client side applications nowadays. Let's see if this like whenever you're creating something. Let's see. This is a test. This is a test. Let's just say test. Return test. So how whenever you're creating something nowadays, a lot of times there'll be some sort of create button or save button, right? And so a lot of times when you click that button, you'll want to show like a loading indicator that something's happening in the background like that, right? So that's what they're covering right here in React Router, is they're basically saying you can do that, and this is exactly how you do it. So you use the fetcher, and then you use the state of that fetcher to toggle between whatever you're showing in that button. Let's see, for non-fetcher form submissions, pending states are available on use navigation. Yeah, so I could see you using this for, obviously for this, like you're creating a new project, so you're navigating to a particular route. But I could also see this if you're doing like searches, right? So like in this application that I have here, if I was to search for like year, right? This is a Next.js project, right? But you can see my search term gets put in the URL bar. I'm not actually posting, right? It's triggering a navigation. So I can see that being useful here. That's when you'd use the use navigation hook. So that's nice. And then they also have optimistic UI. I'm not a big fan. I don't know if I'm a big fan of optimistic UI updates. I know people use it a lot of times to make their apps feel like snappier, but I don't know. Then you're dealing with a lot of like, what do you do if you're optimistically wrong, right? Oh, they cover testing. As a quality engineer, I love that they have a testing section. I love that. Shiv, I'm good, man. I'm just starting React myself. Oh, very cool. Yeah, well, I think you'll love React. I've really enjoyed all the time I've spent writing React stuff. I've always had a good time, and this new version of React Router sounds like a wonderful place for you to start if you're interested in learning a framework that's, I think, really well thought out and gives you all the functionality that you would get from something like a standard vanilla React SPA, but you can also do all the things that you would do in something like Next.js. So you might check out reactrouter.com. Hello, Alfie. Hey, what's up, Artwork Studios? Good to see you again, man. How are you doing? How's your Friday? Artwork Studios. My dumbass read it as 190 people watching. Wow. Could you imagine if I had 190 people watching my stream? I would all of a sudden get very awkward. Alfie, please compare React Router with TanStack Router. Oh, I haven't looked at any of the TanStack stuff. I've watched a lot of videos that WebDev Cody has made about the TanStack, but I haven't actually used it myself. I said at the beginning, I actually had mentioned this at the beginning of the stream. The last React project I built was probably a year ago. I've been really loving building spas with Vue for my front ends lately. So it's been a while since I've been in React land, but I hear wonderful things about people, about React Query, about React Router, and obviously I think React Router is the TanStack's, like they're trying to offer like a full stack. I know full stack's a dangerous word. This is them trying to offer like a framework, which I think is cool. I've never used it before though, so I don't know anything about it. React Router I've only used in the past when it was just for spas. So that's why I'm trying to learn about version 7 and all the new functionality in version 7. Artwork Studios, I don't understand React. There's not a ton to if you understand JavaScript, you can understand React, you know? React's it's just JavaScript functions, right? It's just a declarative way to build UIs, you know? You declare some state, you just declare some markup. Whenever that state changes, we re-render your markup, keep everything in sync. Obviously the implementation is much more involved than that, but if you know JavaScript, you can definitely understand React. I think going the opposite direction's a little difficult, like trying to learn React without knowing JavaScript. But if you know JavaScript, you can definitely learn React. All right, so this is the testing. Testing is obviously important. When components use things like useLoader data or link, they are required to be rendered in the context of a React Router app. So this is not anything new. This existed in the SPA world as well. So the create route stub function creates that context to test components in isolation. So that's nice, right? So they've thought ahead of time, you're going to have this problem. You're going to need a way to create that context. Here's a function to do it, which I love. So here's a login form. We're obviously using this particular hook, so we need to be in the context of a React Router app, or React Router app. So here's our test. So we create our route stub with our path. We define our login. We have an action. Then you render the app stub at login. So you say stub, initial entries, give it the login. And then once you've rendered it, you say user event click screen. Now, where does screen come from? That comes from testing library. So now that we've rendered this, we should already have our get by text. Although whenever I've used React testing library, I'm pretty sure render returns you something. Like you can do render, and I think you can actually get the query method from the return value of render, if I remember right. It's been a while since I've written some React unit tests like that. I'm pretty sure you don't have to use screen if you don't want to. And then asynchronously wait for the error messages to appear. Okay, well that's wonderful. That makes it very easy. And I think that's the end of it. That's the end of their docs. Oh, deploying. They don't have a... Okay, React Router can be employed two ways. Full stack or static. Let's see, Node.js with Docker. That sounds right up my alley. That's probably what how I would want to deploy it on my VPS. So that they have an existing template to help you do that. Cool. They have a bunch of existing templates. They have a template for Docker and Postgres. Okay. Fair enough. What else? So that was the framework mode. I don't think we need to go through the other modes at the moment, because I think 9 times out of 10 you'd probably want to start in framework mode nowadays, unless you're migrating. Like unless you're trying to migrate from a SPA, then you probably are going to migrate to. First, you're going to start in declarative mode. Then you're going to sort of move to the data mode, and then maybe you migrate to the framework mode. But it seems like if you're starting a greenfield project with React Router, you should just start with framework mode. All right, well, we went through the docs, but I think we need to actually probably build something. I don't know if we're going to build something tonight, but we probably should come up with some idea, something we should build with it. Let's go to, let's see, NeoVim, OneDrive, desktop, things to look at on stream. This was the first thing I want. So this was the thing I wanted to look at. So this was up to bat. Let's see. Let's just add a little update here. Let's see. We read through the docs, and we looked at the starter template code. Now let's build an app with it. Probably make these checkboxes, couldn't we? So we done this. We need to do this. I know this isn't a markdown file, but I don't care. What will we build with it though? I had an idea actually. I had an idea for have you guys seen the like the buy me a coffee sites? Alfie, you're watching from Indonesia? Nice. Well, Alfie, we're glad to have you here from Indonesia. I hope things are well there. Hope you're doing well. Artwork shows VS Code, no autocorrect. To be honest, I'm just bad at frameworks. Artwork shows calculator. Oh, nah, man, I built enough calculators. The last calculator I built, calculator I built was an iPhone calculator. Or like it's like an iPhone calculator clone was the idea. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, this was the last calculator I built. This was the thing I thought was most ingenious. Was I actually put like a timer up here at the top. I don't want to build another calculator. I also built a calculator as part of Free Code Camp. There's a calculator project in there, I think. Is it in here? Or maybe it was in the front end. I think I want to. I think building it like a. Yeah, and here's the calculator I bought for, and this was the calculator I made for the. I wonder if it still passes all the tests. Let's see. Yeah, it still passes all the tests. Nice, very cool. Yeah, so I've built enough calculators. I think I'd like to build something a little more novel. But yeah, if you've seen the last calculator I built was a generic one made in React Native. I have never written any React Native code, but I'd like to. I'd like to build something for the mobile. I'd like to know more about mobile development. You know, I feel like professionally, I'm pretty adept at testing web applications, but I don't know a ton about testing mobile applications, or I should say native applications like Windows Forms apps, or you know, like native Mac apps. So I'd like to learn more about that kind of mobile development world. I know there's a project out there for testing called Appium that a lot of people use. I'd like to learn more about that. So maybe at some point we try. Should we add that to our list of things to try? This list only grows. It grows faster than I can knock them out. But I feel like we should probably things to look at on stream. This one's going at the bottom because we have a ton of stuff already. Let's say try out React Native. I don't know if that link actually works, but we'll add that to the list. Excuse me. If you use React Native, there's a mobile app for live reload. Very cool. Yeah, live reload I feel like is a must. So let me show you the style of site I have in mind. Let's see, Martin Costello. Let's see. Yeah, so here's an example of what I have in mind. So you know these sites that you see them a lot on like developer websites, developer profiles, where basically allows people, hey, if you appreciate the work that I've done, you know, buy me a coffee. Right? And I think in order to do this, they integrate with Stripe. Although this probably isn't gonna let us use all the functionality of React Router. So maybe this isn't the right type of app, because really the only real action that exists here is this payment form. That's the only real dynamic UI or action that you'd have to do. So maybe that's not the right idea. I feel like a to-do app would let us explore everything that React Router has to offer. However, a to-do app is so like, it's just kind of boring, right? Like it's been done. How about this? Let's ask Gemini. How about that? Hey, Gemini. Let's not waste tokens. You know that you're Gemini. I don't need to address you by that name. I'd like to build a project to further my understanding of React Router v7. What would be some good project ideas? I'm trying to avoid doing the typical to-do app. Let's see what creativity Gemini can come up with. E-commerce. A blog? Nah, I've already built a blog, really. Recipe sharing app, maybe. Project management tool. Everyone's done a project management tool. What about like a something that keeps track of like the books you've read? How about that? That might be an interesting idea. It's still the basic idea of kind of a CRUD-centered application, but almost like an application to like track the books you've read. Maybe you can rate the books you've read or leave notes about the books you've read or something like that. Social media for code. It's not a bad idea. What about a social media app where people can only communicate in code snippets? You post functions. That's good. Yeah, I think the book idea is not bad. So maybe we'll do something like that. Also, hey, if you're here, and if you use Vite, like if you use Vite as a bundler, which I do, like I pretty much use that exclusively now as a bundler. But this is kind of interesting that there's a plugin. I didn't know this, but there's a plugin called TS Config Pass that apparently basically lets you use in your TS config file, you can define the path attribute or paths property, right? To basically do like module resolution. So you don't have to do like .. source. You could just do, at source or something, or at, whatever. This plugin lets you then leverage those definitions in Vite, so Vite can resolve modules according to whatever's in your TS config, which is pretty cool. I didn't know this existed, and the only reason I found out it existed was because it's in the template code for React Router. So if that could also help you, you might take a look at this the next time you spin up a Vite project. All right, so should we have Gemini? Let's have Gemini like build us a project plan. Okay, those are good ideas, but I'm thinking actually I want to build a book tracker type of app. Basic idea is a user can I don't know, what I want to say. A user can keep track of books they want to or have read, or they want to read, are reading, or have read. The user can provide ratings for the books and add notes about the books. Can you draft me a requirements doc for such an app that I can use to build against? Let's have him put it in a canvas too for us, huh? How about that? I don't think I want to do authentication though. I don't want to worry about like, I'm just gonna build it as if it's like a single user. I don't want to deal with all that. That's crazy. These LLMs, they can just, I mean, these LLMs, they can just like, just, they just dump out text like nobody's business. You know what's kind of scary though about LLMs, right? This is one of the scary things I see happening with LLMs is LLMs, like they, you give them a prompt like that and boom, they just, they draft a document like this. And on its face, right? This document, you look at it and you're like, "Oh wow. That's good shit," right? But I worry that like how many people do you think actually read through everything that an LLM generates? Like, how many people do you think actually read start to finish? I don't think people do. And so then I think you inevitably have this risky scenario where people are generating stuff with Gemini and then just kind of throwing it out to the wind. Or like, not even Gemini, but just LLMs in general. Because I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever interacted with people over email, if people don't take the time to read long emails, I doubt they're taking time to read long LLM outputs. Oh, I can get an audio overview. It's kind of cool. All right, cool. Well, now we have an idea, so I guess that'll be what we try to build. I don't know if we'll implement all that functionality, but I think it would be kind of interesting to build that. So, why don't we stub this out real quick, and then we might call it a night. We're at 2 hours and 22 minutes on the stream. We might call it a night. This is a night of a lot of reading, not a lot of coding. Some days are like that though. Let's see, React router v7. Start here. Let's start with let's start with that template, that Node.js with Docker. Let's start with this one. It's taking a minute. Artwork shoes. I keep skipping over and over many words. Well, man, why are you doing that? Where should we create your project? Create it in... Well, let's go back to Gemini. Please name this project for us. Can you think of some good names for the app? Oh, shelf space? I like that. Or bookkeeper? I kind of like that one too. I'm going to go with bookkeeper. How about that? I'm going to go with bookkeeper. Put this in bookkeeper. Yes, you can do that. Yes, install them. You know, the one thing these templates don't have, these templates do not have testing set up by default, which I think is kind of interesting. Because like when you create a new Vite project, they'll set up Playwright for you, or they'll set up Vitest for you already. Okay. So there we got deployment. We can just Docker build, and they already have a Docker file for us. If you're familiar with but then build, make sure to deploy the output of npm run build. Yep, that's no big deal. Put static assets in the client. Put server side code in the server. Okay. But I don't think they don't have tests set up for us. So what? Let's go ahead. I want to build. I want to see what the output of the build looks like real quick. I'm not going to actually do anything with it. npm run build. Let's see, tree build. Okay. So what ends up in the build folder? Client, server. So it all gets. So basically, there's nothing. I don't have anything obviously that looks like it's working. Yeah, it's just bundled JavaScript code. Okay. What's the command they used to build it though? Did you guys see that? So React router is actually like that's like a proper binary that has a build. I wonder how they configure that though to output it in that structure. Because they don't have anything in the v config about it. I guess this is probably how they do it. They have a plugin. Huh? Or maybe not, because that plugin looks like it just has to do with the... I don't know. I'd be interested to know what they do. That's something for another day. All right. Well. Let's go ahead and bookkeeper. This is a simple application to keep track of the books you have read, are reading, or want to read. I built it primarily to better understand how to build applications using React Router v7. Let's create a license file real quick. Should probably set up linting and all that stuff, but I'm gonna do that another night. Git add, git commit, chore, add license. And we'll create a GitHub repo. This is a simple app to keep track of books you have read, books you want to read, and books you are reading. Good enough for me. Arun. Hello, Arun. How are you? Good to have you here, man. Hardwork Shoes. Hey, Steven, is npm init supposed to take 3 minutes? I don't think so. That sounds like a long time. We can do test npm init. Sorry, make dir test npm init. Yeah, no, I don't think it's supposed to take 3 minutes. Mine was pretty rapid there, at least for the interactive stuff. npm init -y. Yeah, that like seconds. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with you over there, but that's taking a long time. Oh, also I forgot to. I can't believe it's taken me 2.5 hours to bring this up. But I did. I bought another computer. You think your PC's RAM is dead? Well, that's not good. Yeah, I bought another computer. So I've been wanting to buy a new computer for the last, like, I don't know, 8 months. Primarily, I just want something with a lot more RAM. So almost every computer I work with today has 16 gigabytes of RAM in it, which, I mean, that's more than I've ever had before. But I'd like something with even more. So I've been keeping my eye on like deals on Amazon for mini PCs, you know, and I stumbled across one last night, and it was will it run Linux or Windows? I'll run it Windows because it'll be like my desktop PC that I use here. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how it'll handle streaming with that. It doesn't have a graphics card. It just has integrated graphics. So I don't know how it'll handle streaming from it. But anywho, the reason why I bought it was last night when I was scrolling through because I kind of go through these phases when I want to buy something where I just kind of like continually revisit the same listing over and over without actually doing anything about it. And last night I was doing that. It was kind of like scrolling Amazon, looking at the things I had been eyeing. And I found this deal. It was pretty crazy. So, I mean, it's a little expensive. It's $1,000. But normally it's a $2,200 computer. And it was 50% off. And I mean, it's not like a crazy horsepower machine. But it's an i7, and it's a 14th generation, so it's last year's chip. It's got 20 cores, 28 threads. And then the big selling point for me was it has 64 gigabytes of RAM. So I was just looking for a computer that had a lot more RAM in it. And then it's got 2 terabytes of SSD. And yeah, so I bought this last night. It's supposed to be here tomorrow. I'm very much looking forward to getting my hands on it. I told myself I wasn't going to buy another computer because I have way too many to begin with already. But I just wanted something that was a little bit more of I don't know. I don't know if you can call it like a proper dev machine, but just something with a little bit more horsepower. Yeah, I thought it was a very good deal. Yeah, I thought it was a really good deal. I've been looking at a machine like this on Amazon for like I said, the last 8 months, and everything was in like the $2,000, $1,500 price range. And so when I saw it was on sale for 50% off, I immediately like ran into my bedroom where my wife was hanging out, and I was like, "Hey, would you mind would it bother you if I spent $1,000 of our money on this thing, even though I already have 5 computers?" Luckily, she is supportive of my computer endeavors. So we'll see. It's supposed to be here tomorrow. I don't know. Maybe it won't live up all the hype, and I'll just end up returning it. But it's always fun when you get a new machine. All right. Well, I wrote 0 lines of code this evening. Total lines changed? 0. But I appreciate you guys keeping me company while I tried to kind of wrap my head around React Router for the first time. Or not the first time, but React Router v7 for the first time. But I'm going to go ahead and sign off for the evening. I think I'm going to go work on the Discord bot some more. I'm at the final stages where I just need to rewrite the Docker files so I can deploy it to the server. Yeah, so I do have another version. I do have another version of another feature, I should say. I still have another feature I want to add to the Discord bot. I want to hook up the Discord bot to talk to an LLM. So we probably are going to revisit the Discord bot on stream at some point. But for now, maybe for the next few streams, we'll work on our bookkeeper app. Yeah, features. But yeah, I'm going to sign off. You guys have a good night. Appreciate you all hanging out with me, stopping by the stream. And if you're new here, obviously, the best place to interact with us outside the stream or interact with me or the chat outside the stream is in our Discord. Everybody's welcome. We've got lots of smart, kind people in there. There's about 50 of us, 60 of us in there. And we keep the vibes pretty chill. It's not an overly active server, but it's a good group of people. So if you're looking to talk to us or ask us questions outside of the stream, that's the best place to be. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in another stream or another video or another short. I'll probably be live again tomorrow. I don't know when I'll be live again tomorrow because tomorrow's a weekend for me. So it may not be a late evening stream. It could be a middle of the day stream. All right, guys. I'll talk to you next time. See you, Artwork Studios. Arun, if you're still here, see you later, Arun. Shiv, if you're still here, see ya. Alfie, if you're still here, see ya, Alfie. Waves Coder, Momin. All right, guys. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.